Okay, great. And the second thing, you don't want to memorize an essay that is too long. So you have to time your essays. Most people don't do it. Who has timed their essay before an assessment already this year for the HSC? Very good. Very good, right? You've got to do it for all of your responses. And what's the most important thing? You do that process early. The earlier the better, right? So if you're a couple of weeks out, do that ASAP and have that written out. The target for your essays, okay, I personally think if you have a decent speed with your writing, 32 minutes. Because you allocated 40 minutes in paper 2, people say, oh, you allocated 45 in paper 1, right? Technically it's 45, yeah? Treat that like it's 40. That's my advice. Because it's still worth 20 marks. They're all worth 20 marks. So treat them all as 40 minutes and give yourself that extra time for comprehension, which for most people is a lot harder, quite hard. Because if there's one text that gets you, stumps you, you might need extra time on that. So I borrow the 5 minutes from the essay of the common module and I say, hey, that's just 40 like the other ones. That's fine. They're all 20 marks. So 40 minutes is what you get. 32 minutes is what you aim for. If you're a bit of a slower writer, you can go up to 34 minutes. But why do we allow that buffer? I'll call that adaptation, right? Adapting. Editing in the exam, very good. Rewriting new sentences. I'm not saying to stick exactly to what you had, right? Hopefully that's coming across. You need to be willing to write new material on the day. But obviously, I want you to be able to use your core materials, use your core evidence. So make sure you've got good evidence. Make sure the essay is short enough. Because if you don't know the time of your essay, what's likely to happen on the day? It's the stress. You don't know, like, oh, I need to write. What are you going to do wrong? You're going to start writing the essay straight away. You're not going to take that moment to think because you don't know the time that you're actually working with. Do you see how important it is? If you know you've got a 32 to 34 minute essay draft, then you know you have a couple of minutes, a minute or two, to really think about that introduction. And then you know you have another 4 to 5 minutes that you can spread throughout the writing process to actually make those tweaks as you go. Okay? You need to write as fast as you can for all the parts that aren't going to change, and then you have time to actually think about how you can rephrase things in each sentence. Make sense? So you've got to know the times. I had a book, buy yourself a book where you just do the write-outs timed and write it in big numbers, big digits, the actual time it took you. Be honest with yourself. If it took you 39 minutes, unfortunately, you're going to have to say goodbye to a lot of your essay. Well, not a lot of it, but some chunks. Okay? So then the question becomes, well, if my essay is too long, what do I cut out? Right? First of all, when you do the cut down, try and make your sentences as concise as possible. Don't story tell. There's basic things like that. Just go straight into the analysis in the body paragraph. But assuming you've done all of that, if you had to chop out any particular sentence, especially on the day of the exam, if you're running out of time, where would you target? What would have the least damage? What would impose the least damage or would have the least impact on the mark? So don't cut the conclusion. Make the conclusion one sentence if you're really struggling with time, or if you're in the drafting process and you need to have everything else that's in there, which is unlikely, but assuming you really have condensed everything, you have 3 bits of evidence in each paragraph and you can't take any more away, then you make your conclusion shorter to 1 sentence. You can still get full marks that way. Okay? The next thing I would be looking at taking out if you were struggling in the exam are the link sentences first of all from your last body paragraph and then work upwards depending on how much time you have. Does that make sense? So you want the full thing for as much of the essay as possible, but if you're really running out of time, you take away the link sentence of the last body paragraph and then you shorten the conclusion to 1 sentence. So in fact, when I was drafting my essays, I used to basically just have one kind of longish sentence for my conclusion. That's what I went in knowing I was probably going to do because I wanted to spend more time on the evidence and the analysis. Okay? So it's important that you have a conclusion. You must have at least 1 sentence for the conclusion, or you just wave goodbye to a few of the top marks, and your marks, no matter where you were, will come down because structurally you haven't got a conclusion now. But at least if you have the 1 sentence and then you take away the link sentences, that's probably not going to have any impact on your mark. Okay? Or it's a very minor impact relative to not having a conclusion.